that about the assembly. While you might personally do it one day, or it maybe it's gotten picked up and the man just ahead of you put it back down in the wrong box. Will give you some impression, I think, of what you need. First thing I'll do then is pass out these maps. For those of you that aren't familiar with what we're up here, the Nubian stuff is about the center. I think you know where we're working around. Bill, you want to get one? Yeah, I want to know where we are. You all want to? I don't think so. How do you propose that we do this? Is there any particular order or things you want to do about it? My suggestion is we get up and go over here and sit down by the, or not sit down, stand around the box and let's discuss each one of these things and sort of move along and do it informally. Would this be a approach? I don't know any other way of doing it. Yeah, let's go. Yeah, we can start over here at the earliest if you wish, and we can, this is Tony's stuff here. I don't know whether you have nothing.
It's not possible to put the trays in the center, on the table in the center, so that everybody can get around.
Well, there's two. We could move that stuff off of there and move a tray over there if you'd like, or we can.
These don't represent total assemblies.
Yeah, of course.
We actually didn't bring the Digitized back to the field of the process in the basic observations. Anything that all cores, all tools, anything that might have been a tool was brought back, so we do have some Digitized.
But you have a representation itself.
Yes, we have a representation. The material is vile.
Yes.
It's just a terrible material, but they have some rather good.
Oh, yes.
It's a lot better.
Yes. Yes. Well, that's type B, type 2.
Oh, in Guichard's terminology? No, probably not. In Guichard's terminology, one of his types is very much like this.
Yes.
And extremely so. Type 2, I believe, is the point core.
No, that's the 2. Yes, that's right.
The 2.
Yeah. Yes.
And it's something, for instance, which turns up very clearly in Jemima. It's an approach which is very logical when you're using pebbles.
Tell me, when you're counting David's proportion of Laval and so forth, do you literally take every flake?
With these,
or is there a size cutoff? Because I've heard that Bohr, for instance, in fact, ignores the very small chips.
Well,
without that he's ever
no, we
made a
don't
statement.
use chips within the flake sample for determining le Valois.
Yeah, but sorry, I'm sorry about chips. I mean just very small flakes, if you like. Which are
well, if a flake was this size and complete, we would include it within chips.
Mm-hmm. So you do have a separate category for chips?
Oh yes, most definitely. Yeah.
Or it's debris.
It's one class of debris.
You define it as a size category.
I think this. Yeah, well, we have chips and chunks.
It would include small flakes.
The size is, of course, the problem. I think the size is dependent upon the assemblage you're working on. I mean, there are things. Yeah, there's a problem with this. I know, but if you start.
Yeah,
Well, you can get around it by measuring everything, depending on the size of your sample. I mean, if you're getting 20,000 artifacts out of 10 centimeters and 1 square meter in area, 10 centimeters in depth, you cannot measure.
Well, there's never any point in measuring more than a few hundred things per dimension.
Something else.
Well, the way we do it, way we do it is we would say chips are normally those pieces which fall below the range of the smallest tool. So in a microlithic assemblage, what are chips are decidedly smaller than what would be chips in a Mousterian.
Well, the thing is, if you measure a good sample, you can begin to determine whether you've got a bimodal distribution, whether you've got something that's chips or not. And then design it down.
But if you have a flake, a complete flake, that is smaller than the smallest tool, don't call that a chip.
Well, it depends how small. I mean, I have seen flakes like that,
Yeah.
which I get off just flaking accidentally.
Yes.
They come off at the same time the normal flake
Yeah.
comes off. But if there is a flake, let us say this size, and that's a flake.
Yes. Yeah, so you cut that in.
Because we can get some very small tools.
This is a problem partly of communication, because for instance in sub-Saharan Africa, when people are doing percentages of the Vawa and so on, they will take everything to the platform and bowl and then express their Vawa, whereas it's certain that board isn't doing
No,
this.
board certainly is.
And
we
it
certainly
means that the figures are non-comparable. But it's
That's
very
right.
difficult unless you know the rules by which the other guy works.
Also, board would exclude the eclat de taille.
Yes, but if you use the same, if you're counting the same kinds of categories, then you can eliminate some of your categories and make comparisons with his.
Yeah.
That's not
There's no
theoretically a
problem if your categories are defined.
That's right. As long as you know what is being left.
It would be possible that we do get chip counts.
Yeah.
To inject our chip counts and you come up fairly close.
You'd also
Yeah,
come
no,
up
one of
with virtually no percentages of anything, except for chips.
That's right. And you
You would
see,
end
this is
up
what
with
is mistaken
incredible,
about the sub-Saharan data. Is
yeah.
This separation is simply take all things which platform and bulb is flicked,
No, this.
and then the percentages are very low. And then you don't know whether it's
It masks everything.
Something is snapped or broken, he's been simply rejecting it from the sample for just about everything that he's done.
We don't
treat that as a fake fragment.
Yeah, but he just throws it into something called debitage or debris. He uses the word debris. I only discovered this when I went over to his nest. Dribble mason.
You mean even if it's retouched?
Yes, even if it's in fact a bifacial point, if it's broken, it's going into a pile of debris. And he. Yeah,
put it mildly.
well, he's conscious of it.
It's amazing how well they did, considering how lousy the material.
This material is very like the grey polymer in the convent, which the convent stuff is very nice.
I think it's nice material personally.
Well, it's
Good quality stone, I would say.
yeah, by African standards, it's marvelous.
I'm not used to seeing such fine grained stuff.
We should have brought up the stuff that we weren't sure were artifacts even, make you feel at home. Oh yes, the Vawa is very well made, but it's not terribly dominant. I mean, in terms of normal boarding indices.
But this is the thing that partly what I was raising. I'm totally unsure how you get counts as high Levama indices as he did. Whether you get them by chucking out.
Well, I think the real trick, I know with the Guichars, because I watched them work and work with them, is the tremendous number of pieces they consider to be eclat de taille.
That's what he says, yeah.
When, even at sites with absolutely no biface, no indication, they will run up to 80% of all the objects they pick up, they say eclat de taille flip over their shoulder.
Yeah, well this I find.
And I think there are some things that are quite clearly eclat de taille. But I think they were including things which they considered perhaps core preparation. Now, this is all very nice, except for the fact that very many of our tools are made on exactly those kinds of plates. Therefore, you cannot exclude.
Yeah, exactly. And this is why my whole inclination is it's better to be comprehensive yeah, then even if your percentages are much lower, they're going to be comprehensive.
There are some denticulates over
Yeah, you certainly you can break down the table flake count into things which you regard as just trimming flakes.
notches someplace over here.
Yeah, no, those are pores.
Or notches, I saw something.
I don't know, there's some notches. Here we go. With notches on surface material, we try to be very careful.
But in terms of
That you'd call
I've forgotten the
denticulation.
frequencies. We have to look in the book, but in Europe, what's called a denticulate Mysterian has a very high frequency of denticulates in the finished tube.
This has a very high frequency. This is not denticulate. This has this has a quite high frequency of denticulates and notches. The denticulates are all quite fine. In good sense, but there are large.
But in the tool category, it's high.
Oh yes, it's extremely high. This is one assembly. Oh well, these are just partial samples. But this came from an exhibit east of Wadi Halida. It was a small exhibit. My impression, I can picture it, I would say was 10 meters by maybe 8 or 9. It took up about 2/3 of the
Less than 100 square meters.
Yeah, this is small. This is one thing. I chose sites to work here which were very small sites, with dense concentrations. The Guishars they love those patents that went on forever. And I looked at them and I never had any feeling I could in any way say that it represented 10 years or even 1,000. You know, I looked for sites which were small, which were limited, the concentration was heavy. Now, of course, that's selective. But every exhibit had sites. And it seemed to me that these were the ones that could be more effectively worked with, more assumptions.
What did you do by way of sampling the material? Did you is that a total sample, total collection, or is it a sample?
No, these are all represent samples. We treated the Mysterian stuff differently from site to site. We had a certain problem that the Mysterian was technically outside of the reservoir, and therefore I had to kind of do it on Saturdays and that kind of thing. Normally, we would lay out a series of square meters, not 1 square meter, usually 4 square meter areas, and across the site. And then, admittedly, intuitively, we would take usually the densest part of the concentration and collect 1 or 2 squares. And I go back to the lab and check.
1 or 2 4 meters?
Yeah, check the tool density. If I were running, 8 tools per square meter, it gave me some idea of how large an area I had to collect for a minimal sample.
Which is how much?
Well, at this point, which was, 6-7 years ago, I was running on boards assumptions of a minimal sample of 100 millimeter tools. I'm not sure this is a valid sample. But we made an effort to get well over that sample, to over double that sample, wherever possible. And in some sites, it would be necessary to quite literally systematically collect 2/3 of the site to get that sample in tools. In other sites, it would run perhaps only 10%.
Well, we may get on.
Now, I think that the minimal of 100 tools is questionable for the middle Paleolithic, but certainly invalid anything later. And when you start talking about Paleolithic, that range, 100 tools just doesn't mean the varieties, and you will tend to get
Jenny, are there any side scrapers in the...
very poor quality.
You wouldn't call that denticulate?
No, this material is vile.
How about the sources of the rock now?
This is sandstone. Yeah.
That's
This is denticulated. I don't know if it's A or B. You probably read it before.
Yeah, but it's
without practice.
Without practice, yeah.
10-10.
Yeah.
These are
Yeah,
corrugated bands.
There is virtually no difference between the ones with and without, except a small percentage. And I didn't view those as anything possible.
What do you call it? Numbers.
I mean, this did well, of course.
I'm not sure that it was.
Sites were,
No, I wouldn't put these on. Was that in there? It shouldn't have been in there. It should have been in here.
uniform distribution. Was it
As I say, I won't.
Above certain
This stuff, I haven't looked at this in 5 years.
Because the
I
trouble
hope to
is,
never look at it again after this.
students sort of get hold of these things.
Oh, yeah.
They get put back in different trays.
And things get pulled out for classes and they don't get back in the right
Which other
place.
side's good? That's the side.
Yeah, well, here.
Yeah.
This is my feeling here, and one of the ways I find the industry is an extremely poor quality of retouch.
Why did you decide to call it mysterious? In a situation where for the most part you're giving local names.
Because, as far as I could determine, the range of variability within the, well, starting with forced typology, that is well over 90% of artifacts easily fit into his categories, which is about as good a justification. It's not a true sound philosophic justification, it's rather practical. That could be used. Then having done it, I had to decide to what extent was this similar to what is the Mousterian complex. And this is a Mousterian complex, I think, is a very vague term. It may be useful. I'm not really convinced. But I felt that the parameters of occurrence of the major types fell well within a reasonable range of what had already fully been defined as Mousterian. Now, another name certainly could have been given. I'm not sure it would have said anything. And if I remember right, there was some comment that we're giving too many names anyway.
Well, yeah, I suppose the problem about calling this Mousterian, I don't know.
Certainly, I was not going to call it Le Valois.
Pardon?
I'm certainly not going to call it Le Valois.
No, well,
Yeah, that's become the name of a technique, and it's not a good idea to use it.
But I don't view Mousterian as an industry.
Yeah. But the thing is, of course, it does, calling it the Mousterian does tend to give it geographic, cultural, well, it will for the world at large, it may not for you.
And chronological.
Well, chronological is okay in terms of, so far, I guess, as what's known about chronology. But certainly, I don't know what you feel about that, but you could lose this quite a lot of middle schools.
Well, I'm sure you could, but that's one of the questions I think about.
That's one of the things that you want to talk, you know.
Yeah, I think this is one of the things we have to deal with.
To talk about. But
Whereas,
some of
for
it
instance, a lot
certainly.
of the Mediterranean Mousterian you couldn't lose in the African Stone Age at all.
On the other hand, there are all kinds of Mediterranean Mousterian where you would have great difficulty justifying, for instance, Kino Mousterian with the Valois Mousterian and all that. You would have great difficulty in seeing really any connection between them.
They're really
They are really distinct. They are incredibly
So in
distinct.
this respect, the general word is hiding the distinctions.
Sure.
I agree.
You're really sort of not much better off than we were in Africa up to a couple of years ago, using such terms as still bay, except that you had got original definitions.
I think if Mousterian is viewed solely as a very broad complex with certain general tendencies, which can separate it from, for instance, Sango and Lupemba, which can separate it from some of the Asian material, because there are different tendencies. Then I think it's all right. I don't think it's a very useful term.
No,
It describes a very broad,
yes,
vague similarity.
yes,
As
yes.
it's, I guess, as valid as the general concepts of Middle Paleolithic and Upper Paleolithic.
Yeah, it doesn't really mean too much more than what a Middle Paleolithic does. Really.
It means pretty much the same thing,
Yes.
actually.
Yes, because looking at that, for example, one could perfectly easily say we've got material from Malawi, and Glenn would agree with that we could really sort of call that Mousterian. The material from the Malawi, the MSA Malawi Rift.
Yeah, well, as soon as your industry is fairly generalized, then it will go. And this is very generalized.
Well, no, it's not as generalized as it may look. There is very narrow parameters of variability in relationships between two types. And one thing that is very much, very strong here is almost a total one-to-one relationship between what is normally considered Middle Paleolithic types by board and what are considered Upper Paleolithic types. That is, this is distinct from most Mousterian in the very high percentage of end scrapers.
But aren't the end scrapers really just on short flakes?
Yeah.
This is a problem.
But this is no problem. Almost all end scrapers in Middle Paleolithic anywhere are
Yeah,
on chunky
but this
flakes.
would be one of my principal critiques of Board's kind of terminology, that it, in a sense, takes you up a garden path by setting up a category which, in fact, includes important diversity and lumping it.
We've been working with this problem, and I think the extreme is the letter we got from Roman Schild, from Poland, who was dealing with typological problems. The Poles seem to love this. And we're using a typology where we have defined every type. We're using, for at the moment, it's well over Tixier's number of the things that occur in our area, mostly for late Paleolithic. And Roman said it was all right. On the other hand, it really wasn't complete enough because there were at least 40,000 types of burins and 8 million types of back bladelets. And in his terms, he's quite correct. There are 8 million possibilities. But if you had 22,000 types of back bladelets at a site, you couldn't deal with them once you had listed them. You would still end up with a back bladelet index.
But in case you
Very
miss
easy to differentiate end scrapers made on.
Oh, you can, certainly.
You can graph them.
yeah, well, this is what I was going to say.
Well,
This is where I would depart.
He does it because if he's
doesn't
graphing
think it's
Mousterian
Yeah.
types of end scrapers, he graphs them in one way, and if he does it in an upper Paleolithic graph, he's
Completely
graphing it
different.
another way.
Certainly.
Or if he does it in the Mousterian and some are on blades, he calls them in the upper Paleolithic category. Remember?
Yeah.
So you're doing it the same way. It's just that it's very hard to
Well,
read the graph.
I'm becoming very disenchanted, in fact, very much against the concept of a fixed type list and a cumulative graph. This locks you in,
So I think
and it's...
But what do you substitute?
Well, I think there are possibilities. We're working with various...
Are you with perhaps reading what I'm saying about the scrapers to suggest that we should have more types? My argument would not be that we had to have more and more splitting of the types, but really that you come at it in a different way and you find ways of expressing morphology and measurements and so forth, which
also
which
very
will be...
difficult to comprehend when reading, though, if you don't handle the material.
But it is
I
misleading.
think it's possible. So, the scraper thing, I think, is an interesting illustration because we came across this problem in the Acheulean, that if we divided, we took the classic classes, end and side scrapers, then we were going to have about equal numbers of these. But what really the situation was that in terms of the frequency distribution, if this is elongation and this one is no elongation, rectangle square, we were looking at that. And you could call these ones end scrapers and these ones side scrapers. And in fact, you were scaring, you say, well, we've got 50% end scrapers and 50% side scrapers. And what we really got is, in effect, 100% non-elongated scrapers. And this is the kind of thing which gets hidden in typological.
Well, I have two very basic feelings about this, that a type list per se is not nearly enough. There are all kinds of things that it doesn't tell you, because you cannot get everything you want to say into a type list. You can't get technology and typology successfully into a type list. And the tendency to use just type lists has been disastrous. I think in some of our reports, we made an effort and started to get more into technological aspects as a part of the type list. We're doing much more of this. We've formalized this and experimenting with it a great deal more. And I think the technology in some cases may be more important.
Some kind of inventory of the material you've got in recognized, understandable terms. I think an essential first statement about the stone industry. But when you actually want to make careful comparisons and so on, you really have to.
All kinds of things.
It's so difficult to get that to a form where you don't either load the dice or
If you use the
The kind of question they ask is the German kind of answer we get.
yeah.
Anyway.
if you use a term like upper Paleolithic group, it does rather obscure the issue, because I mean, upper Paleolithic artifacts like end scrapers and so on are very definite things, which are very different, really, from end scrapers made on these short plates, fragments of plates and so on.
And not
So,
just in the
he was in here.
A classic upper Paleolithic land has end scrapers, which are indistinguishable.
Yes, well,
They are end scrapers.
but,
This is one of the things that.
but then that's
you
only
also-
one. That's only one thing. I mean,
But I think we
the
do this for
initial
every
definition
category.
is drawn up from, well, certainly for Western Europe, which is one thing we were essentially drawn up for that. Oh no, look, they're very, very special kind. I don't say you don't find them elsewhere, but I mean that's essentially the primary sort of form that
We're going to get through all of these industries. I think we move over to the late Paleolithic.
Really? Well, on the other hand, having said what I just said, there are lots of these things that I have classified as small cavities. Under circumstances where they're unlikely to be cavities.
These two drawers here are
But isn't this, in a sense, anthropologically predictable if they are casual tools made on just an assortment of waste?
I wouldn't think so, because, well, in a place where, in fact, you can't separate workshop and living space, as happens in this crazy, this happens, in fact, you're grouping all your sites, so this is totally irrespective of taking what's held here and there. Calculate this whole matrix of coalition and all of your various fractal groups, whatever, against the variable projection. And if I have a waste category, then I have this, what I call this small pool. Very big. They load heavily. This is suggesting a consistent relationship of waste and small tools. Either, in fact, they are tools that have something to do with the waste, or in fact, they're just, the more chipped up end of the waste area.
No, in fact, it's very interesting.
This was just, you understand this to be
And you see, it was possible to
different lenticular mysterium or part of this?
That's normal, that's plain mystery, this is the
Different side.
Yeah, different sides, classical.
Well, these two now represent sites of about, 50
but it's in the bottom.
Now, some is double surface, because you can see it's still in situ, this was just coming out. But of course, this is just the most beautiful I've seen. One thing is,
Yes.
There's just a little bit. Say a little bit, but all the they have been living wanted to see, and I right. So he took care of it. This guy is circulating in one place. Well, down. Not the way you go. So I have to play where it was. Very nice. No, I think right at all. You like beautiful stuff. Just like the outside.
I've done description too.
That's somebody here. And I saw them. By the way, you know this last time. I looked at this Is there anywhere else I didn't. And someone else had done something. I had never thought it was very good.
With some of these, I would rather see them down
I'm dying to see it all. We couldn't remember our list.
Jim, what's the two? Remember the two pre-dynastic sites that we shot?
Gouges, what they call gouges, five-rails, lots of urine, inscriptions, beautiful inscriptions. There were just a few. Many different kinds, and it was all, and that site is just what I said, it was built in very and I got the proper
Yeah, there was lots of blade like none that I was really sure of.
Well, never mind. Just a story. I don't know how much detail. Just.
Yeah, it looked like there was these bricks. There were bricks with a burial.
One of the kinds of things I suspect material just the ability to strike or punch along blades.
Yeah, we got some long parts of that.
You want to work with each guy?
It's run along with a big sand. one last report, stuff you guys about access to stuff like this, about this thing, and it's actually work from CAD or shows a preserve artifacts and but they were just mapping stuff like that. You look at the place on thing. Some of them are fairly thin, some of them are very thin. So you'll be getting long triangular places, convergent places, like a long quadrilateral parallel.
Yeah, well, it's gonna happen on some.
Do you think it's a variety of standard elevation?
Right now, it's in a golf.
Probably.
No, sorry, I mean,
Probably
saying
gonna hire
very
a
liberal,
or
you can get variety
Yeah.
because things are not standardized, or you can get variety because there are many techniques to
Yeah,
but it's opportunistic in a sense. Yeah, no, that's what it is.
I know, I took a look at all the stuff. Miserable piece of it. You never saw this collection. Yeah, I mean, there's no flint. I mean, what there is original.
We have some.
This time, bring it back. It sounds like my wife when we were out there. She was crawling this. This no art at all. Well, I was lucky to give you this. I just wear go ahead. Later on this episode,
Well, there's one of the, some of the SMU houses, some of the American school, they have SMU I would try and make this explain the situation.
Shall we tell you?
Well, he's the one who's in charge of that.
This would be a big contrast if they made it very complicated.
No, I didn't say. I said it didn't.
You mean it's a step missing?
Yes, it's quite dense. The technology would certainly suggest.
I've just seen the reports of those
I can't derive this.
The problem being what?
Urines.
Some of your she will everything.
Tremendous acceleration.
And as of last summer, it was locked up at grade 6.
So this is the reason why.
And she said she was going to give it all to your She at first was going to give it all to Bernie. That would have been a disaster. And then she decided to give it to
So what they do now is to show that there certainly is a gap. Rather than just setback. It's a totally different thing.
But she does have more convenience. We got that particularly what
But doesn't the raw material in the sense on that theory? Okay.
Well,
Here, at the very early site, so, 5 years.
It's 50-50 when you look at it. The fair grade is still available.
Oh, yes, it's always available. It's mainly because it's also, the size of this kind of
I'm not arguing for the fact that this is the same set. I'm just trying to figure it out. So the situation is that you don't see transition state, but there's no reason to suppose that things go on with this stuff.
something similar to this, but I don't have what
Yeah, that's certainly that's isn't it? You should have its own name.
in the sense of relationships.
Do you have deposits of material sufficiently in the Nile Valley?
They're not even in the rooms under.
But you have enough exposures to ensure
You can't conceive of these being seasonal.
The same group. There's no.
Yeah, but there's vegetation activity.
Well, the sites are distribution but it is in general area.
Among other things, we have some of this in old soils, much further than
At least it's temporarily older.
Oh, yes, temporarily, considerably. There is a kind of gap.
and these do not occur on
Judging from the map.
Way back, we have some you have Australia, which has a very high distribution in almost every closer to the Nile, right? Let's be on the nearer piece of Russia, but not always, which is almost not close. Then you have the Ashur, which has an exceedingly high distribution. Let's just spread coming forward all over the place. None of that is at least fairly sensitive.
But I thought the Nile was so far and then they run out of Nile deposits.
Yeah, but I think, yeah, certainly even by this period, let me tell you, we spent a lot of time. What you get, I think, is by this period, by late 2000, there probably was a sufficient service back from earlier dates.
But then this is a change. This is a change. Doesn't necessarily mean that there was any necessarily traditional They're not the same. They're not the same, but they might be
Well, no, I think it's very useful to have a separation. You find these sites are essentially
This material we have 5, 6 stratigraphic position. So we have overall, this history itself, fairly wide, but the vectors are changed, and they are very clear. It's not a very you get more and then less and more and then less. Definitely.
So that may be moved, but there's some other.
This is the beer and the yes, I see.
It's small. It looks small. I think this is very good.
This would be a percentage of the total running on.
Yeah, that's probably simple. Minimum was maybe yeah, well, I think this material, you just take everything. Point of view, he's choosing the prettiest business. Well, that's what you then also select. Well, I would say this place I think we also around the
Random sampling is useful for quality. Well, you find yourself starting to think. Exactly the typical, which you normally would think, which is your problem. Yeah, but you could also argue, you could describe a range of variation. Except that this is the end of the sampling procedure wouldn't necessarily give the range of variation that you think ought to be represented.
What I think this time
and then we look at it, I see.
As a percentage within the
Well, there's two ways that you can argue that you ought to illustrate enough of a collection so that you can see what the proportions are. That's one way of doing it, visual representation of proportions. The other thing is to simply represent the things that show the range of variation of differences.
but the range of variation is always structured by the features which they
Yeah, well, it should be.
And this is well, in a sense, to get away from it.
But in a sense, I agree.
But web pages, for instance, if we have some kind of sort of quick graphic way, maybe a pie chart or something.
Yeah, we need something that shows numbers.
You say that give you a much better idea. It's one side.
Yeah, I think you have a lot of typical. Yeah.
Well, yeah, that of course, but this is where you've got to put in the range.
No.
Or
Like a model, not typical at all. A model means something different.
when you use typical in statistical sense.
well, no, if it's in a statistical sense, then typical in archaeology usually means an extreme form, exaggerated character, which is seldom most.
That's why, but try and get in the full range from one end of the type like that.
Yeah, if your typology is based on metrical characteristics, if it's based on more subjective or observational characteristics, then
obviously we're going to.
you can.
And the question is, how does one set them apart?
Yeah, you could illustrate a sample of all blades that are 10 centimeters wide or 10 millimeters wide or something of this sort. You want to do it, that's not what you do usually. I mean, you can't really describe your mean standard deviation unless you're doing metrical characteristics. You can't do it on a combination of
Well, it looks like something that is one time we used to call.
But then you're measuring, so this is still single part.
Yeah, well, our problem in illustration and typology both is that we see objects, but we tend to think of finished pieces, but at the same time we're basing our typology on attributes. And these are incompatible in many ways. Especially, you can't. It may be that one set of illustrations isn't sufficient.
Right.
You have to try to do too many things in one way.
You've got a lot of units.
One thing, another thing, another way.
Many more.
You can't do it all at once.
And you've ever done typology.
So they're now doing this and one back into it.
Well, none of us ever do that.
So, on the other hand, you can see typological.
There is a shift in the material preference here. You see there's an earlier little paper, I think, in the earliest Corlucid, with still some
measurements are nice to work with.
less quartzite. We come out here later.
But sometimes, you know, you can
More Nile. Here we pick up our first trace of Nile in a more diverse background. And then here, the Nile is even more. Now we go to the next one. You'll see that it's all in.
Well, this goes in with the general tendency of areas right through time to reduce the size of the artifacts. So therefore, you can use the much finer detail that comes in in the small sizes. Whereas at the beginning, you needed large-sized material, so therefore you went to the coarser stuff until you end up right down there. Just breeze of and it does have tremendous difference.
Yeah, I hate
someone who's not enough.
Where was it published?
I thought this
So periodic numbers out.
Maybe get over there in the first part of May and stay in December or so. Place to
five or six indices was really
They go to graduate school.
What is it?
By the way, there's
Kimball's another man.
I guess these are the three steps.
I know what you're talking about, but I haven't.
As you go up from the base, you have base revenues of the size
Just put that on there. Yes.
Some of them somewhere 3 levels. Really? That's why I think we need to have the whole core every single place. I just got about 50
So, no, we didn't get it. I believe we're going to be neighbors next year. I'm Lou Bell at Edmonton. No, I teach at Edmonton now. And you're going to be in Calgary, aren't you? No, I thought you were. I don't quite. Oh, I thought you had taken it. I don't know who else. They have My impression was that you had to.
Oh, that's right.
I said, no, I thought you were going to be. He's taking chairmanship. Not a look, I mean, a guild. It's kind of like sticking out. Yeah, he works in the national park. Years.
They use the full range of the sector state.
Oh, they're keeping a part of that.
It's just, well, if there were six.
It's a lot of
Last time you ever seen it. Four centimeters. So they made a sign. They were losing money anyway.
Oh, no. It doesn't really everybody else. So why not reading the account of Hoffman, this is really a special case. So again, there's no.
But it's not Le Valois. I mean, to call this Le Valois core.
Le Valois. Le Valois.
What do you mean by Le Valois?
Well, just taking, it's never been defined very clearly.
If you mean to predetermine the shape of a core, to in fact predetermine a single clay coming off of it, yes.
Yeah, that's what it is.
On the other hand, unfortunately, I see an awful lot of Le Valois cores, particularly in Cornwall, we've been able to reconstruct the Le Valois flakes.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Plus, the shaping flakes have been made into tools. You're not supposed to do that with them.
So this wasn't the question I was asking, the leading question. Again, given that what you have.
Why is this all the same?
No, I'm not denying. But again, is there any evidence for not saying this is a possible success?
That, yes, because this site happens to be 3,000 years earlier than that site.
That's
That is certain. On basic low carbon basis. That's a very good reason why this one developed.
Sorry, why didn't you say that again?
This is earlier than that.
Israel.
No, I won't say.
it doesn't.
I wouldn't say that it's not possible that this developed out of some generalized that. On the other hand, we get virtually no clue about this. I mean, by the time we find it,
Well, that's
it's either no.
Your husband is a dog.
No, I don't think so. Because in concept it may be more than but when you read anything by reading you have no trouble distinguishing what it is, the kind of core it's supposed to look like, the variability involved, their point cores and so on. But this kind has never
That's not-
described.